So today you guys are going to begin in Photoshop. We're going to do some simple stuff today, just so you can get familiar with everything. You guys are going to be using layers, the elliptical marquee, the brush tool, the pen tool, convert point tool, direct selection tool, direct selection tool, and deselecting a selection. Also free transform. You guys are familiar with layers, so go ahead and create a new layer here. This is the layer that we're going to be working with. In Photoshop, usually you don't want to distort your original, so you usually have it on its own layer. Right now, our background layer is our original layer. If we wanted to use the background layer as a working layer, we simply just double click on it. If you notice, you get the new layer panel and you just press OK. If you notice, now it's working like a regular layer and you don't have the lock here. We don't need that for today, but just so you can note it. Alright, let's bring our layer back. New layer. The first thing we're going to use is our brush tool. If you notice, if you click and hold, you'll see other tools here. So please make sure you indicate what brush tool, if you have a question um, pertaining to tools. So we're going to use the brush tool here. If you notice here, we have the control panel exactly like Illustrator. Here's where we change the size and the hardness of our brush. Size, of course, is the smallest, small or big. You notice you can click and drag. If you move your cursor over, you will see the various sizes. You can also change the size of your brush by using your bracket key on your keyboard. Let's close this panel. And I'm not getting anything. I think I may have to set that. But usually, if we're using our pen tablet, you can change the size with the bracket. And that may be a setting that I have to change for Photoshop CS6. So we'll come back to that one. So back to where I was starting. This is where you change the hardness and the size of your brush. Hardness, of course, is um, basically how dark or how heavy your line is placed on your canvas and or how soft it is. Right now we're going to be working with 100% hardness. So it's going to be a very dark line. If you notice here you have some hard and soft brushes, and so we're just going to begin here with this first brush, the hard round. And let's change it to 4 pixels. If we notice here we have opacity and we also have flow. Opacity, of course, is the transparency or whether or not you can see through an object or not see through an object. And so we want our opacity right now to be 100%. We don't want to be able to see through our marks. When we use our pen tablet, our digital tablets, this will become more important. Right now, for this particular exercise, it's not that important. Flow is how much paint comes out of the nozzle. When you guys are doing your digital painting, you can change how much comes out. So whether it's a small amount or a large amount. And so keeping it at 32 right now is okay. We have our new layer, and there's some other things that we'll go over as you guys become more familiar and more advanced in Photoshop. But right now we just want to create a new layer because that's going to be our working layer. If you want to, you can just type lines. If you notice, I just double click just like in Illustrator. So with the brush tool, you just simply click once, hold down your shift key, move your cursor to the next angle or next point, click. Move cursor, click. Move cursor, click. And it works something like the pen tool. Now let's see the difference in the pen tool. Pen tool is here. I'll do the triangle, click. And notice I'm not dragging because if you drag, you'll get a curve. Click, click, and close. And if you notice, nothing appears but a line. So let's go to our control panel. If you look, it says path. We want to make sure we're creating a path right now. And right now we haven't made a selection yet. But now, if you look, if we make a selection, you press OK. I'll go back. We don't want to do that just yet because we actually want to draw a line. So, with the pen tool, you right click, we hit stroke, and since we already set our brush to hard and at 4 pixels, you press OK. And now you have your triangle. I'll do that again. Let's go to our history brush. If we notice, we can go all the way back to when we first made our first point. That's how the history panel works. If I want to go back and keep the things that I did, I just select them. So let's go all the way back before we made the first point. So, pen tool again. Making sure we have path. Click, 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 and close. See the indicator, the circle, and you close it. You do a right click, stroke, OK. And you press escape on your keyboard to get rid of the little guideline. Okay, next we have the marquee tool. Marquee tool. Now, since we have some other things already on this particular page, let's create a new layer so then I can teach you how to merge layers too. So we're going to click, hold, and drag. This is our oval. And now, right now, let's just say I wanted to resize this. I press Command plus T to transform, but it says it's empty. That's because nothing's there. And this will come into play when we do our next ovals. Okay? So we're here. Control click, stroke. And I think our brush was set at 4. So we'll put 4. We can leave it at center. We press OK. And we're going to press Command plus D to deselect. It's a little heavier if you notice. So I'm guessing when you are using your brush and then you're using the other stroke from that particular command for the elliptical tool, that your line is slightly thicker. So if we want to change that, history brush, go back, right click, stroke. Let's see if 3 is more like the other lines. Press OK. It's more like it. Command plus D to deselect. Okay? Now, notice if I turn this off, it's on its own layer. Own layer. Same concept as Illustrator. So let's merge these two layers for now, so it can become, excuse me, before it becomes, I am getting tongue tied. So it becomes one layer. Got it. Command plus E merges. So now it's on the same layer. This will become very important when you guys are working on digital paintings so that you won't have a lot of open layers or separate layers. You would do temporary layers, so meaning that you would create a new layer to draw your new object or your new paint strokes. Make sure that it's what you like and it's what you want, and then you merge it to the rest of your painting. Okay, let's create a new layer so that we can use our transform tool. Okay, still got the elliptical. Our elliptical is the right size, but it's not um, rotate it correctly or not in the right orientation. So, control click or right click, stroke, press OK. Now, I want to transform it, which means I want to rotate it, not necessarily change the size. But you can change the size and the rotation when you use free transform. So, on my keyboard, I hit Command plus T. If you ever forget that, you just go to Edit, Free Transform. You also have some other transforms here. Your scaling, your rotating, your perspective, and flipping. And right now we don't need those just yet, and those will come into play at some point. Okay, and so if you notice in Illustrator, when you get the bounding box and you're doing the transform, you see the same indicator, the double arrow. So you just click, hold, and drag. And let's move it over. Now notice we have, let me move this over. Notice we have another indicator here. And this is because when we create things in Photoshop, it creates it almost in like in layers, like a paint layer. So let's do two things. Let's go ahead and use this elliptical that we drew because it's at the right angle. And then we're going to press Command plus D. Now, if we look over here in our layer, we still have both, but we don't need them. So let's get rid of this one. We have something called your lasso tool. Select the lasso tool. If you hold the lasso tool, you have three other types of lassos. The first one is a free form or free drawing, so you can kind of draw whatever shape you want to delete whatever or select whatever you need. Then you have the polygonal. Excuse me. That's more or less you're taking the. It's almost like the pen tool, but it's making a selection. And once you make the selection, you just press delete on your keyboard. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to deselect. If I go back to the magnetic lasso tool, what it does is it lays down a point, but as you drag, Illustrator actually lays down a line for you. So this is really good when you have nice clean line work and you don't want to um, have to redraw to select it to fill color. Then that's one of the easy ways to actually select your object. All right. And if you notice when I press delete, it didn't remove everything. And that's because it was laying the line down on top of the drawing. And your selection is like little marching ants. So it's like little space in between each little mark. So it doesn't select everything. So let's go back to our lasso. And just simply draw a selection and you press delete. Okay, so we can now move this. Another shortcut is V for the move tool. This is your move tool right here. I didn't introduce these tools, but it's kind of going with the flow. So you click hold and you drag it into place. Notice it could be rotated a little bit more. Command plus T. Rotate it just a tad bit. Move it over and press OK. Or return on your keyboard. Okay, so we're going to draw the next stroke. 3. Command T. Rotate. I want to stop doing that, but for now, let's leave it. Command T. We'll have to move it without the selection so that we won't get that. And press delete. And let me show you what I mean when I say without it being selected. I'm going to go ahead and delete both. Marquee tool. And you say you have those little marching ants, and I was telling you how Illustrator layers things. If you look, let me see if I can get really, really close. It's really pixelated, if you notice. And pixels are not, what can I say, linear. It's more in a grid because you see those little pixels. So if you notice, it's going up and down and around. It doesn't give you a smooth edge per se, like Illustrator. And that's why Photoshop is called a bitmap program as opposed to Illustrator being a vector program. Illustrator uses mathematical formulas to create smooth lines, whereas Photoshop uses the pixels that are on the screen. Okay, let me go back and choose my right tool. It's here, stroke, press OK. Now before I actually move this, I'll deselect it first. This is so that I won't have that double thing that was taking place. So Command plus D, and now transform. Now notice I have both of them on the same layer. So who can guess what I need to do? I need to cut this one from the other layer in order to transform it. So click hold drag, edit cut. If you notice, same shortcuts as Illustrator, Command X, and then edit. And right now, I just want to paste it in the same place. Same options that you had in Illustrator. In the same place. And notice, anytime you copy and paste anything in Illustrator, sorry, anything in Photoshop, it automatically creates a new layer. So Command plus T, and now we get to rotate. And notice you don't have that double image. Before you had the double image because it was selected and it was only picking up some of the pixels. Because don't forget, Illustrator does things in layers for the most part. So now we have one layer, two layer, and three layer. We don't need three layers, so let's go ahead and merge. Can you remember what the shortcut is for merge? Command plus E, Command plus E. And so now everything is on the same layer. I think I'm going to do one more for you, and I think you get the gist of it. So I wanted to go and use the pen tool again to show you that you still have some of the same options to get angles if you need them. So let me do this one right here. Click, 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 click. And if you notice, I get a little curve there, which I don't want. So you notice you still have the same anchors and handles like Illustrator. And you just click, hold, and drag. And close. Right click, stroke. Okay. You notice this right here is a little too curved here, and I really don't want that. So let's go back before we actually close the path. Now the only difference between Illustrator and Photoshop when it comes to the pen tool, once you make that stroke, you can no longer edit it with any of the options like direct selection tool to move anchor points. Once you put the stroke on there, Illustrator, sorry, I keep saying Illustrator. Photoshop reads it as a bitmap graphic. So, if you go to the pen tool, we have the same tools as Illustrator except for the free form here. Convert. I want to convert that to an angle more or less. So let's hit that. Oops. Go back one more. I think I did it. Yeah. Let's make sure though. Let's look and see. I think I still see a curve. Oh, I did change the point here. I just need to move this up. You don't have to get this perfect, just as long as I can see that you've created these particular shapes. And I'm pressing escape twice. So I'm zooming out. So when you finish, the only thing that I need to see is that you have the lines and the background. And since I'm using the Google Classrooms instead of you actually giving me the whole Photoshop file, you guys can create a screenshot for me and then upload the screenshot. And screenshot again is Shift Command +4. If you notice, you have your cursor here, and just simply click, hold, drag across the area so that I see that you have included the right layers. And if you notice, you should hear a snap. Once you hear that snap, your screenshot always goes to the desktop. And so you are uploading your screenshot. Oh, do me a favor before you upload. So when I'm grading, just name it. Double click. Here, let me close it first. And then put your name on your screenshot and then upload it to today's warm-up/class assignment because I think you guys have to leave me today. Okay, well, that's it.